Welcome to Smarter Circuits, the podcast. Ian Klein is who I am, and Smarter Circuits is what I do. I'm going to be kind of casual this week. This is sort of a slow time. Just after Thanksgiving, we're going into the cold, slow month of December. And I mean, not that I guess I'm casual in all of them, even though I have a tendency for re-recording them. I'm not going to do that. This time I'm going to go straight through, mistakes and all. Although I hope those mistakes aren't awkward pauses, because those are like the worst thing. Anyway, old business. I do not have a specific project showcase this week. Well, I don't have a project showcase this week. I kind of have a project that I can talk about for just a moment, and that is, but it's Ben again, not Ben again, but Ben again, from last week. The gentleman that did the ADSB build has, I mentioned that he was doing a Meshtastic build as well, and he has done that, and he has done a write-up. So you can go and check out that write-up if you'd like on electronenclave.com. I'll put the link in the description. AliExpress. I was going to talk about the AliExpress thing this week, but I'm not going to because I still have not made the purchase. I'm probably not going to until after the new year because I'm simply too busy and I don't need more stuff in my life at the moment. I need to get rid of some stuff and then I'll do it. And still not talk about what it is. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is interviews/guests. This is going to be a thing that does happen. And I actually have a couple people in mind. However, I have not figured out exactly how I want to do it logistically. There are several platforms for it. I would like to do some test drives before I do the real deal. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about is, this is kind of along the lines of interviews and guests, I suppose, but I am considering getting a co-host. Don't know if I will, don't know who it would be, because I don't really know anybody locally that has the same interest or who would, sit in. Maybe I'll ask people just to see if they would sit in anyway. It would be nice to have an outside perspective, really. I did ask my wife if she wanted to do it because she could speak to the people who live in the house with us. My listeners, I think, for the most part, are in the same situation I'm in. If they're in a relationship, if they live with somebody, I guess a roommate would even be, you might be making somebody's life better or worse, and sometimes one or the other, which is actually probably most likely true. Anyway, I am thinking about getting a co-host. My wife won't do it, so we'll see how that goes. Briefly, I want to talk about dislikes. Now, I don't mind dislikes or anything, and I'm not here to lash out at people who dislike me or my content. That's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I don't expect everybody to like me. I can be wrong, and sometimes I can be off-putting. I recognize that. I'm a human being. So that's not the thing. The thing that I want to bring attention to, though, is, and this is true of every broadcast medium or performance medium, really. It's especially true in stand-up comedy, and that is, you don't want to heckle the person who has the microphone because the majority of the audience is there to see them or listen to them, and so chances are they're on their side. So if you dislike me and you want to be rude, I have more ammunition. And not me specifically, anybody who's got the mic. But even that's not really what I wanted to, the point that I wanted to touch on. The thing that I think is amusing is all of it, and everybody I think is aware of this at this point, for the most part, and it was even true before the internet, you know, any publicity is good publicity. Any engagement is good engagement, regardless. The internet, specifically the algorithm that YouTube and other such platforms run on, they all value one thing above all else. How long does somebody else stay glued to you? Or how often do they? Can they leverage your face or voice? So I'm going to give advice to anybody who doesn't like me. I'm going to give you the ammunition that you need to really do the most harm that you can possibly do to me legally. And I hope nobody's going to do any of the other stuff to me, because that would, I don't think I've said anything that warrants all that. But I don't know. Some people have some pretty strong feelings about Zigbee, I guess. If you want to do the most damage as a consumer, walk away. Don't do anything. Don't leave a dislike. Don't leave a comment, because all of that tells the algorithm and the admin that I am able to invoke emotion and get attention. And that's all they care about. They don't care if it's good or bad. They just care whether or not, they can put an advertisement in it. That's it. Anyway, so that's all I wanted to talk about with that. And the reason that I did that, real quick, the reason that I talked about that is there's, I believe, a single person. I've had some videos, I've had two, that have more than one dislike. But for the most part, I've only had one dislike in right about the same time frame after publishing. And I think on a specific category, though I haven't exactly narrowed down what that category is, but I do believe that there's one person who's systematically disliking some of my videos, and if it's an honest dislike, so I think it might be an honest, and what I mean by that is, I shouldn't say honest dislike. Let's say it's not a personal dislike as much as it is a content dislike. It's somebody who maybe expects me to stay in a more narrow lane, and that's actually also even more constructive. Now, I have to guess whether or not it's one or the other. Unfortunately, there's no real way of, I can look at my ratios though, and I do get graphs that show me how long people stay in the video and that sort of thing. If you don't know that already, and all of that is, it's all indicators, right? I try to react to those indicators as much as possible. And if I don't react to a specific indicator, it means that I don't care, or I probably won't change. Okay. I want to, one more thing before I get into the main stuff here. I want to shout out to the members in general, not specifically. I'm not going to list everybody, but the reason I'm going to shout out to them real quick is because I don't really talk about the members much or credit them in the podcast. I don't do credit rolls in the podcast, so I hope that doesn't offend anybody. And if it does, bummer, I guess. But it's easier for me to just, very quickly cut this up and then send it out. Today I'm going to try, and every time I've tried this, but today I'm going to try to just go all the way through and see how that goes. And if there's too many awkward pauses or something, or I say too much, or do something that annoys you, other than just you are generally annoyed by me, let me know in the comments. And if you're generally annoyed by me, let me know in the comments. Okay. So, the main topics that I want to talk about. Now, I had said last week that I wanted to talk about sort of shopping, and I want to refine that to the thing that's really what was on my mind and what's important while shopping, and that's value assessment. How much is a thing worth? Oh, and I do apologize for not having this out yesterday on Black Friday, it was a pretty busy day. Like many families do, we have multiple Thanksgiving situations. We went to somebody's house, and then everybody came to our house, and that kind of thing. So I did this a bit later than I would have liked to. But this is still, this is always relevant. Honestly, value assessment is always a relevant thing. It's just particularly important during this sort of season. Although I guess this is just the gift giving season. Well, I guess birthdays too. You think about this at birthdays. You tend to have this compulsion to maybe go a little overboard, or some people do. I do. I really like buying gifts for people because I like seeing them have a little extra something that makes their day good, you know? And that brings me to the way that I personally value things for the most part. And this is something that was actually a friend of mine named Justin had told me this, and I loved it, and I've used it ever since. And he was talking about when he buys video games, how does he know whether or not he got a good deal, or whether or not it was worth the money? And so his bare minimum requirement was that he got 1 hour of fun gameplay for every dollar he spent on the game. And that's a really awesome way to look at it, because there are a lot of different, what I call value densities to various things. For instance, watching a movie is going to generally cost you way more than $1 an hour, even if it's at home, unless you own it and have watched it enough times for it to, have dropped below $1. But a lot of times you'd be hard pressed to do that. And honestly, if it's a movie you watch that much, then you already know it's worth it. You bought it. But the game thing, the video game thing, I thought that was amazing. And the context was, this was the early days of Steam, which, if you are not a gamer or not a PC gamer, basically it's just another, games launcher / app store situation. And there are tons and tons and tons of games on there that are no good. Just like any other platform, there's going to be some bad stuff out there. And some of it is, innocently bad. It's just, maybe it's their first go at it, or they rushed it, versus the ones that are just really trying to throw anything out there and just get your money, which there's plenty of those too. But that's what makes this so important. Because if you spent $3 on a game, you're probably not going to have the same expectations as you would for a $60 game, or at least you really shouldn't. But if you played it for even 3 hours, that's not bad. You've done better than I used to do in the arcades, for sure. For sure. Anyway, so yeah, I try to look at things as, how long will I enjoy this, or how convenient will this be for me? And that kind of brings me into the next part, the next big topic, things to consider when planning or assessing devices or automation. And I'm going to focus on automation because that's sort of, the general conversation that we have. And I'm going to assume that, this applies across the board to your devices, or even services. So I'm going to include services. I have two things: the categories of automation and the types of automation. Now, these are not from any textbook or anything. This is not, maybe there's something that's more intelligent than this, or more defined than this, or, tells me that I'm wrong. But this is what I think of home automation, IoT, etc. And this, you can apply this to other things, but there are 4 categories of automation, or 4 categories of desirable device / service. There's devices and services that serve a need, that directly create comfort, that enhance your routine, or are just for joy. And now, to give you examples of those, a device that serves a need would be For instance, a refrigerator. The automation there being pumping heat out at a specific time or for a specific amount of time to keep a specific temperature, right? And that's there for food safety. So that's a neat. Sorry, my headphones are falling off. A device that directly creates comfort would be, and this is sort of, it's comfort slash convenience. You can kind of lump those together. But I have a manual recliner, and I also have an electric recline couch. And I don't mind sitting in the manual recliner and using the lever, and my wife doesn't mind either, but it's much easier for her to use the electric because she has shorter arms, and it is sort of an awkward place to do that. So, not saying that it's hard, but it does enhance or create comfort. The couch itself, I guess you could say, is a device of sorts, but not really an automation. As a matter of fact, it's kind of a stop to an automation, right? Because it prevents you from falling. Next is routine enhancements. The first example I could think of in the home as far as this goes, and I don't have one of these, though I do have a plan to build one at some point. Smart mirrors. Smart mirrors are a perfect example of routine enhancement because it allows you to get information during a time when you would not otherwise be, you'd be doing something fairly mundane. The other examples that I could think of were mostly like centered around things that you use for work, which is what separates them from things that are for, just for joy. And they don't have, a thing that increases your or enhances your routine doesn't necessarily have to give you joy. A lot of times it probably doesn't. It's just there for convenience, not necessarily, again, not necessarily joy. And to me, from a manufacturing standpoint or even from a service standpoint, the most difficult thing is the joy device. It is harder to make a thing that gives you joy than it is to make a thing that makes you more efficient, and easier to do that than to make a device that increases comfort, and easier that than one that serves a need. Most devices that serve needs are fairly simple and straight to the point. So, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of technology, really. Okay, and now I want to talk about types of automation. There are two types of automation. There is logical automation and physical automation. Subscriptions, regular recurring orders for cat food, those are logical automations. Relays to turn on lights, your thermostat, those are physical automations. And this isn't really as practical or useful, but while I was thinking about these things, I actually came up with some subtypes because there's delayed, interval, and instantaneous as well. You have some things that you set up to happen later, some things that you set up to happen regularly, and some things that you set up to be triggered and to happen when another thing happens, event-driven. And there's probably like a real model for that, and I just don't know what it is. If you do, do more of that engagement stuff and put it in the comments. But these are the things that I look at when I value plan and assess. I also look at them as far as complexity, because chances are, if it's more towards the just for joy, I have a higher tolerance for complexity than I do for serves a need, right? So that's something that you should think of. You don't have to think of specifically, granular categories the way that I've laid it out, but sort of in this neighborhood, I think that you should think about these sort of things. And that actually kind of brings me into my current work in progress. So I'm trying to put more structure to the podcast so that it's a little bit smoother, and so that I'm actually, because the whole reason I'm doing this is honestly to try to put more value out there, if at all possible, even if it's just entertainment, But anyway, so what I want to do is, kind of go over what like an old business, new business, and then that sort of thing. One of those is my work in progress. Right now, because I wanted to give everybody insider information on the podcast, I am working on a protocols video. And I'm going to cover things, I'm going to cover a lot of stuff. I'm going to cover TCP/IP through to things like MQTT, COIOT, and so on and so forth. It's going to be a pretty sizable video. I'm going to dig into some network topology as well, which is what the model. I had a segue in my mind that you weren't aware of, but the thinking about modeling actually reminded me of this because I will be talking about network topology models, which are just like protocols, not specific to any scope. Meaning, some protocols require logical things, some require physical things, some require both, some apply to just one very specific thing. There's no, can't think of a better way to put it than scope. There's no set scope. There's no set size of any given protocol or model. It's all in how you think about a thing. There are definite truths. There's physical and not physical. Those are the truths. But there are different ways of looking at specifically the logical, from presentation to logic to communication, whatever. So I'm working on a video on that. I have been working on that script for a few days, and it is a heavy one. So it's probably going to take me another couple weeks at least, because I'm doing a lot of research. I know a lot of this stuff actually because it was what my degree was in. My degree is in networking and security technology, and so we discussed things like the TCP/IP stack and the OSI model and so on and so forth very, very, very much. So I remember all of those things, but there are some things that I didn't dive into. There's a lot of newer stuff. So, and then there's a lot of stuff for IoT that I never really looked at that I'd like to learn a little bit more about. And then there's some things that I want to complain about. And I will tell you now, and this is going to, I don't know, maybe this will drive away people, I don't know. But I have complaints about Matter. I definitely have complaints about Matter. As a matter of fact, compared to Matter, Zigbee is my second favorite communication thing. Although I will say this, just, for everybody's general knowledge, I have become a little bit more fond of Zigbee because I have a couple devices that implement it well. I still would not have pursued it because I don't actually have the need for any of the features that it has that Wi-Fi doesn't. But if I did have those needs, I will say it does seem to fill those very well, and the devices that are using them are that use it are pretty quick. The thing that I don't like though is I can't do things like log into a portal. Now that wouldn't be necessarily important except in a situation such as like Shelley gives you a scripting language that you can write, logic and make them do other things other than just on off or whatever, dimmer or whatever the thing is. And so you can't access that if it's a Z-Wave. At least I don't think so. If anybody watching or listening knows of a way to access scripting on a Z-Wave device, I would love to know if that's possible. But I'm pretty sure it's not. And it's certainly not with Zigbee. Not that I don't think there are any Shelly Zigbee devices. But anyway, so I'm working on the protocols thing. That I really just kind of went into that topic, but didn't mean to. I'm also going to be talking about the Shelly i4DC a little bit more in depth, and there's a reason. What I am about to do is something that I said I wasn't going to do. I'm going to show something on the video. So those of you listening to the audio podcast, I do apologize. I will describe the thing for you after I have shown it to the people who are watching this on YouTube, more than likely. This thing that I am now holding up, which is a, I would say paperback size copy of Anna Karenina thick box with switches on it. On the extreme ends, there are toggle switches that have those red flip-down levers. In the middle, there's 4 smaller toggle switches, and on the side, there's a key switch. This is the build for my Shelley Community Choice Award contest entry. I'm not going to tell you what it is or what it does, but I will tell you that this is what it looks like now, and it is going to get 1 or more Shelley i4 DCs and some other stuff. So, take away from that what you will. You will know after I have done the write-up what it is. Once I have submitted the entry, which is really just putting it on the Reddit, then, I'll talk about it on the podcast. Or maybe do a video. Let's see, what else? Oh, lastly, and more on the... So, I'm actually going to do more IT videos. Not really super in-depth. It isn't for IT people, but it's about IT things, and sometimes it will be somewhat advanced. Other times, though, it's just going to be, installation instructions, or perhaps test drives. So the last video that I'm working on right now is I don't want to say advanced, but like heavier services video. I did the local services video where I talked about NTP, DHCP, DNS, so on and so forth. I want to talk about streaming, hosting your own streaming server, hosting your own image server, hosting your own document server, those sorts of things. I have a few more examples of those. And then I also want to talk about a few more ways of hosting these servers and services, or setting up, sort of emergency IT situations, I guess. Warm sites, cold sites, that kind of thing. Anyway, so I'm working on that. Those are the 3 things that I'm working on. Next week, I want to do a new thing for a little while on the podcast. I want to do room-by-room automation. So next week, I'm going to talk about kitchen automation. I'm going to try to cover all of the things that may improve what you do in that room, or maybe even give new purpose to some rooms, or multiple purposes to some rooms. So look forward to that. And so I'll take a room every episode, basically. There may be rooms that don't consume a whole episode, and if so, I'll have other topics. I'll have other topics anyway. That's just the way I do this. But those will be my focuses for the next few weeks at least. The holiday, I'm probably not going to have an episode the week of Christmas, but I'll probably have episodes all of the other times. And that's it. Oh, wait, one more thing about the kitchen automation. I will be talking in more depth about the sawn-off thermometer. I shouldn't say talking more in depth. I've done more in-depth testing, but not as much as I wanted to do, and I do intend to do more, but that's going to come back up. I had said in the video that I reviewed it that I was going to do more test driving of it on Thanksgiving, which was sort of true. My wife and I didn't think to use it because it was on the side of our fridge until the bird had already been in the oven for quite some time. So when she said, "Hey, why don't we grab that thing and check the temperature?" I was like, "Well, I mean, you might as well just grab the other one at that point, because you're not using it for the thing." But I still wanted to see, how good it was, and the turkey was done. So it only got to be in service for, at most 30 seconds. I did not get any footage of that 30 seconds, so not going to be doing that. I'll have to do another test, but I will be doing more testing on the sawn-off barbecue thermometer because I am going to give it to a friend afterwards. Let's see. That's it. That is all I have written in my notes, and rather than try to force more and just make a lot of dead space, I'm just going to do the smart thing and end it here. Again, I don't know what length these are going to be. I hope it's not terrible that they're different lengths. I really thought it was going to be 45 minutes to an hour, and I do believe that it will creep up there as I get more content, stuff to share, and sort of get more organized and put more effort into it. But just like the videos, I will try to do this iteratively better, like improve a little bit every time I do it. So thank you for being here with me. And on that note, I want to thank everybody who listens, whether you're subscribed or not. I want to thank the members, anybody who has given me some of their time. We have a limited supply of minutes, and we don't even know what that supply is in total, and you've given me some of yours. I genuinely appreciate that. That is very cool. So hopefully you'll join me next week as I continue podcasting about smarter circuits.